Having spent time myself in Helmand between 2010 and 2012 with the U.S. Marines, I was struck sort of by the friction points at times between the American troops and the British troops, and then also perhaps even more so the leadership on the two sides. It seems pretty clear that some of those British commanders were concerned about their legacy and whether or not the American Marines were going to sort of steal the thunder.
Yeah.
How much do you think that had an impact on what was happening on the ground to the rank and file Welsh guardsmen in that unit?
Well, right at the sort of ground level, not very much. And in fact, there was tremendous camaraderie. I mean, there were US Marines who were sort of embedded within the Welsh Guards battle group. And so, I mean, one of the most fascinating kind of units within the unit for me was a bunch of British snipers from 4 Rifles, who historically the Royal Green Jackets. And I mean, I arrived at this outpost, knowing nothing about them, and we came under fire as we dismounted from the convoy, and it seemed pretty distant to me. I don't really think very much of it. And then I heard a couple of big cracks of which sounded to me like 50 caliber single shots or something kind of quite big and quite close. And I found these 2 snipers, and they'd registered like 75 kills in 4 weeks between them, and the last 2 kills of the tour were the 2 cracks that I heard as we arrived. And one thing I hadn't expected about them is snipers from that unit had been operating with Anglico Marines, side by side, sort of in the dust in these like outposts. And so there was one incident of a British corporal who killed 4 Taliban in very, very quick succession at a distance of more than a mile. And right beside him as he was taking those shots were Marines from Anglico who were, had their sort of tough book laptops there and were downloading data from a US drone. And then it was a US Black Hawk which flew in to recover the bodies and confirm that actually one of them was a fairly senior Taliban commander. Most of the medical evacuations were done by American Black Hawks. Codename was Pedro for the British. Most of the combat air support was American. So a lot of the Welsh Guardsmen were talking on radio nets to Americans sort of every day. So at that level, it was really sort of seamless, and they were like sort of brothers in arms, and tremendous sort of respect and comradeship. But certainly at the higher level, at the sort of brigade type level, this was a very sensitive time because the US Marine Corps arrived in June 2009, so right in the halfway through the tour for the Welsh Guards and for this brigade, and any suggestion that the sort of 20,000 or so US Marines were coming to the rescue or bailing out the British, which I think is actually a fair characterization of what was happening, was just anathema to the British. So you had to be very, very sort of careful of it. And I know that there were Americans who were saying, well, British would call themselves Task Force Helmand, and the Americans were saying, well, Task Force part of Helmand. Let's face it. So there was definitely an issue, and the British very sensitive about what happened in southern Iraq, and a feeling of sort of failure there, frankly, and disappointment from the US military at the British performance there. And so they were very wary of the same thing happening in Helmand. And I think ultimately that is what happened. As I'm sure you've found out in places like Sangin, there was American criticism of British tactics there, and there was a feeling that the British hadn't been able to do the job, and that's why the US Marines were there.